When was the last time you built a sandcastle? I imagine that most of us have, at some point or another, at least attempted one. Personally, I'm more into building boats and cars and aeroplanes for my children to sit in. But I do the occasional sandcastle as well. We were fortunate enough last summer to be able to go on holiday near Minehead and spend a little time on the beach there. And of course, we built sandcastles. Compared to the way some people build them, ours were modest affairs, some of them little more than just one overturned bucket. You see some, don't you, that look like they've been designed by professional architects. Castles that rise up higher than my head with levels of detail I can only imagine. You see sand sculptures of people and animals, wonderful, incredible art in the sand that takes the breath away. But there is something that my sandcastles, all of our sandcastles, and those amazing, wonderful ones have in common. All sandcastles and all sand creations have in common. They don't last. Eventually the tide will come in and will sweep them away. Sandcastles are temporary. You know, one of the things I find most remarkable about Jesus appearing to his disciples after his death and resurrection that we've been reading about today in John 20 is that the evidence of his crucifixion is still on his body. He has a new body. Jesus is the firstborn, the first fruits of the new creation. He is the king in the kingdom of God. His resurrection proves that death has been defeated and that we too might be raised from the dead. But he still bears those wounds. And those wounds tell us something. They tell us that the work of Jesus on the cross wasn't to put everything back as it had been before. God's plans for all of creation are not about putting us all back into a version of Eden as if none of human history had ever happened. God's plans for a new heaven and a new earth, they involve reviving, reforming, remaking, redeeming what is already in place, what he has already created. We're not going back to the start. It's not just fixing everything. It's renewing what is here, making it new. And so what we do, what happens now, is going to have an impact on the new. Our lives today are not just a way to get into heaven. We don't just behave in such a way that will get us over the line, everything else being meaningless. Our lives today, what we do in this life, help to build the kingdom of God that will last into eternity. The story of the Bible is not a story that leads up to an end. You don't get all of this preamble and then you get to Revelation and it tells us about the end of the world. The Bible is not a story that ends with the end of the world. The Bible is a story about getting ready for a beginning, of preparing for the wonderful new. God has given each of us an opportunity to be co-creators with him, co-makers, to help forge an everlasting kingdom. He doesn't need our help with it, but out of his wonderful, abundant love and grace, from his generosity, he wants our help. I wonder how you help reflect the abundant generosity of our Maker. You know, God, the great creator, he's asking you to dig your hands into the sand and help him build a castle. And the things that you build with God today, they won't be washed away by the sea when the tide comes in. They will not fade away when this world ends. The things we build with God today will endure into eternity. Tomorrow is the final day in our reading challenge. We're going to read all of John 21 together. And a big well done if you've read along with us every day. And if you've missed one or two, I'd encourage you to continue reading and catch up to read all of them. And just to let you know, from next week, we will be scaling back a little on our regular thoughts. We're going to be aiming for 2 thoughts a week rather than 5. That means there's going to be no thought for the day on Monday, but we will be back on Tuesday. Every blessing.